Hi. For those of you listening at home, hi. Hi, Polly. We are continuing the notes on Chapter 8, First Assignment. Who got your notes, please? Can somebody refresh my memory? What the graph of y equals sine of x looks like from beginning to end. What do I draw? Where do I go? Julie, go.
So you draw a graph.
Okay. Any particular side longer than the other?
The right side.
Yeah, the right side longer usually.
And then make dash marks.
Okay. Gentlemen? Convo time is over. Go ahead. 5 is good. Eventually I'm going to have you make 8. But right now 5 is okay.
Okay. And then you start down with easy numbers, but easy x's or easy y's.
Okay.
So
in this case,
pi over 2.
5 over 2.
Pi. 2 pi over 2.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm still hearing chit chat. Go ahead.
2 pi. 5 pi over 2.
Yeah. So what are you counting by?
Pi over 2.
By pi over 2s. How about on the up down axis, the y?
Go up 1 and down 1.
Correct. Up 1 down to negative 1. Michael, take over. How do you graph y equals sine of x? Where do you start and where does it go? Let's go.
Start at 0, 0.
Correct. Start at 0, 0, and then where do you go? Up 1, okay. So pi over 2, comma 1. So give me the height at each given new point. Where does it go next? 0. Negative 1. And 1. Is it sharp pointy teeth?
Yeah. Wait, what? What did you say?
Is it sharp pointy teeth for the graph?
No, it's like a wave.
Correct. It's a smooth wave. It'll keep going from there. Does that make sense? One of the, yeah, go ahead.
Is there such a thing as like a amplitude graph?
There is. It's very hard to do. I can show it to you later if you want. But right now, I'm going to highlight a couple things, especially given the notes today. We have been saying height of 1, height of 0, height of negative 1. For this one, that's okay. But eventually our graphs are going to be moved, like up 7 spaces or down 4 spaces. And we won't be able to use these numbers anymore. I would like you to use the actual words, max, base, and min. So maximum, baseline, minimum. That way it'll work no matter how high the graph goes or how low the graph goes. Make sense? That is the graph of y equals sine of x. Can somebody talk me through how to do y equals cosine of x? From beginning to end. Go.
Okay, so you draw the same like size graph.
Okay.
And then you start at 0, 1.
Okay. Start at 0, 1.
And then, sorry, yeah, you can draw the 5 dashes.
Okay.
6. So,
5 dashes. What are you counting by?
half pies.
Yes. Again, half pies. 5 over 2, pi, 3 over 2. 2 pi, 5 over 2. And again, if you get stuck on these or you find it hard to count, just write 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2. Even if you could forget to simplify, you will have most of the points in the test. Go ahead.
Okay, so, yeah, you start at 0, 1. And then, or the maximum.
Right, the maximum. I like that word. Okay, you're at the maximum. Where do you go from there?
Then you go to the baseline.
Baseline?
Then you go to the minimum.
The minimum. In this case, that's what? How far down?
2, negative 1. Or
Negative 1. Correct.
pi.
Pi comma.
Negative 1.
Good. Keep going. Well done.
Then you go back up to the baseline.
Base.
Then you go up to the maximum.
Max.
Base.
Base. Exactly. And then smooth, they call it an undulating curve. Okay. Those are the basic graphs of sine of x and cosine of x. We will eventually start playing with these. You might remember in like chapter 2, chapter 3, and there was a reference to it yesterday, about something called a parent graph. A parent graph is the type of graph where everything, all the moves, resizes and flips are stripped away, and you're just left with the raw graph. These are raw graphs. I am about to show you what it looks like if you throw every single move, resize, and flip into here. Please write this down in your notes. You will need it. This is called the general form of and this is a general form of a sine or cosine graph. There's a word for that. If you need a generic word for sine or cosine, something that just waves up and down smoothly, the generic word is called sinusoidal. Sinusoidal. A sinusoidal curve, or sinusoidal graph, is a graph that smoothly waves up and down from a max to a minimum, and with a baseline in between. Okay. So sine is a sinusoidal, cosine is a sinusoidal. Okay. Here's what it looks like. Y equals, I'm going to give you 4 new letters in here. A times the sine of parentheses, B, parentheses, x minus h, plus k. That's the biggest and most complicated that a sine graph will ever get. You might recognize h comma k from the conics chapter. H comma k is either a center or vertex or some sort of important point. In this case, it's the center of the graph. But let me go through. There are 4 letters, A, B, H, and K. In real life, there are going to be numbers there. There might be a 5 in front or a -3 in front. There might be a 7 here or a pi or something weird. H is a number and K is a number. Think back to your moves, resizes, flips, and input and output. Do this each time. A, is that a move, resize, or flip?
Resize.
It's a resize. Why do I say that? Yeah, it's multiplying. Good. Does it look like it's resizing the input or the output?
The output.
Yes, the output. If you notice, sine is the actual function. Anything inside the sine is input. So B, X, and H are all input. The 2 things that are outside the sine are output. So it's output. Refresh my memory. Is output left, right, or up, down? It's up, down. Can anybody tell me if you're going to take a shape and resize the up, down, there are 2 ways you can do it. What are they? No. Just basically.
To resize up, down?
There are 2 ways you can resize an object up, down. You can make it what, or you can make it what? Don't work too hard.
Like positive and negative? Like,
Yeah, true. Like you take a blob, it's like 6 inches high. Change the up-downness.
you mean like multiply over time?
Yes. What would that actually physically do?
So
Make it,
multiply, make it bigger? And
yeah, bigger in what direction?
Up,
Up. What do we call that?
height.
Yeah, so make it, as opposed to wider,
Taller.
taller. Bingo, there's the magic word. You can either make it taller, or you can make it,
Like narrower, shorter.
which one?
Shorter.
Shorter, yeah. Taller and shorter are the vertical direction. Wider and narrower are the horizontal direction. So I'll have to keep this straight. If it's resizing the output, it's either going to make it taller or it's going to make it shorter. When you multiply by a number, like number 2, do you expect something to get bigger or smaller? So, just in general. Multiply by 2, do you expect to get bigger or smaller? Bigger. Does output do you expect?
Yes.
Yes. So is this going to make it taller, or is this going to make it shorter?
Well,
Taller, correct. So it's going to be A times taller. A is the height multiplier. It's actually the same thing as we ran into in the parabola. A parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Very, very similar. A is the height multiplier. B, move, resize, or flip. Fill in the blank. Like this one right here. Does it look like a move, a resize, or a flip? a resize. What do you say there?
Because it's in front of that.
Right. Is it add, subtract, multiply, divide, or what? It's multiply. Adding and subtracting will move. Multiplying and dividing will always resize. What causes a flip? Can somebody refresh my memory? John, what flips a graph?
Negative or positive sign.
Right, making it negative or making it positive. Correct. Switching the sign. This is resizing, so Miller again. Resizing the input or resizing the output? That's the input. It's inside the sign function. Is that left, right, or up, down? Input is left, right. There are two options for resizing in left, right. What two options? Output is you can make it taller or shorter.
Wider or narrower?
Wider or narrower. I want to know which one this does. Yes. Why is it making it narrower?
Because it does the opposite of what you expect.
Correct. Input does the opposite of what you expect. B times narrower. Like 2 times thinner or narrower. Or you could also say half as wide or something like that. Is this making sense so far?
Is that like the width multiplier?
It is. It is the width multiplier. H. We're going to have a different name for that in a moment. What is H doing? Pete? Is that a move, resize, or flip? It's a move. What makes you say that?
Because it's addition or subtraction.
Correct. Is it a move on the input or on the output?
The input,
Input. So is it left, right, or up, down?
left, right,
Yeah. There are only 2 options for moving left, right. What 2 options? Don't work too hard.
positive, negative,
Right. So physically, which directions?
all right, left,
Yeah, right or left. Which one is this going to do?
and to the right.
How do you know that? Yes.
The input is the opposite of what you expect.
Yeah, and they put a minus there because they knew that. So it's going to be H spaces to the right. Now what if H is negative? Like X minus -3. What is that going to do? Yeah. It'll move it to the left. Yeah, it'll cancel itself out and move to the left. K. Check left. What does this do? Move, resize, or flip?
So
Move. Input or output?
output
Yeah. Is that up, down, or left, right?
is up, down,
Yeah.
and it does what you expect, so you can move up to, or up, just, why does it do?
You move up.
Just move up, K.
K spaces, exactly. Does that make sense why it's going up? Output does what you expect, and they're adding. Now, if K is negative, then it will sink down. That's not your fault. Do you see that there are 4 things there? 2 resizes and 2 moves? We talked about some of these yesterday. As a matter of fact, there are 5 things you need to know on any graph. Baseline, amplitude, horizontal shift, period. And then related to that is quarter period. I'm going to look at these 4. One of those 4 letters that we just talked about changes the baseline. Can you guess which one? In other words, the baseline, like right now, the baseline is 0. The baseline is like y equals 0. There are only 2 things you can do with the baseline. You can either move it up or move it down. What do you think? Which letter is doing it? Go. Good guess. That's not moving the baseline. K is affecting the baseline. By the way, here's the equation. You might want to write this down. Y equals K is always going to be the baseline. K is the baseline. Because normally it's 0. So if you add K, it's going to be 0 plus K. Can you guess what letter controls the amplitude? Yeah.
A.
It's got to be A. Try this. Amplitude equals, and I'd like you to do this as a little bit of a surprise. It's the absolute value of A. The reason I do that, anybody guess? Yeah.
We're gonna measure amplitude in positive terms,
Right. It's a distance. So why would we have to use absolute value?
we want it negative.
Right. Could there ever be a negative number in front of sine? Sure, -5 times sine, but what would the amplitude be? Positive 5, right? It would be going 5 up, 5 down, but the distance is always 5. So the amplitude of the absolute value of A, horizontal shift. Which of those 4 letters seems to control horizontal shift? Yeah.
B,
What's that?
B.
B actually resizes.
Oh, sorry, H.
Yeah, horizontal shift would move left, right. Horizontal shift is H. And that's it. It's actually the easiest of the 4 formulas. P is the only one that's a little bit complicated, but still very small. This is the only one where you have to do a little bit of memorization work. Can somebody refresh my memory? What's the normal period for sine and cosine?
2 pi.
What's that?
2 pi.
2 pi. Which of these 4 letters is going to play with the period? Is going to mess it up or change it? Go. B. It's resizing the input, which means it's narrower, that'll make the period smaller, or wider, which will make the period bigger. Does that make sense? So B is going to be changing the period. How? Is it going to multiply by B or divide by B? Let's just say it's 2 pi. Was it going to be making it wider or narrower? Darn it. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Narrow.
Yeah, it's narrow. Do you do that by multiplying or by dividing? How do you make a number smaller, usually? By dividing. We're not going to multiply the period by B. We're going to divide the period by B. 2 pi divided by B is the formula for period in general. Does that make sense at all? And to get the quarter period, you just do 1/4 times B. Okay. We're not going to dump all of this into homework yet. As a matter of fact, let me see if the photocopier has gotten over its complex and photocopied something for me. Well, look at what a little bit of electronic therapy will do. That's nice. No problem. Here you go. I'm going to walk you through some of these. This is actually your assignment for tomorrow. There you go. This should not be terribly stressful to do. No problem. I'm going to give you more notes on this general form tomorrow. The worksheet only plays with 2 things. It changes the baseline, and it changes the amplitude, and that's it. On this particular worksheet, the period is the same, the horizontal shift is the same. For every single one of them. Make sense?
And theta is just x, right?
Yeah, theta and x are interchangeable. I kind of wish they would do x, but they didn't ask me. So number 1 and number 2 are pretty much right up there on the board. That should not be a stress. Okay. And they were nice enough to count by 5 or 2s for you. In the entire worksheet for this particular one, they are counting by 5 or 2s all the time. Do be aware that in the next worksheet, they might not do that. When the period changes, you count by different stuff. But for now, it's just here. Turn please, if you would, to, actually look at number 3. They scramble the order sometimes just to see if you're paying attention. Number 3, I would write that differently. Do you see that 1 plus in front? Where should that be? At the end. What is that? Is that A, B, H, or K?
K.
That's K. That 1 is K. So it's cosine of theta, or cosine of x, plus K. I just want to show you, if you want to use this general form, and you want to try like number 3, y equals, I'm going to rearrange it, cosine of, I'm gonna do x plus 1. Keep in mind, the plus 1 is not inside the cosine. Everybody look up here for a second. Can somebody fill in all the missing numbers? So I want to write this in complete general form.
Y equals
Uh,
1
1
cosine
cosine, parentheses what?
1
1 parentheses x minus what?
0
Yeah, I don't see any subtraction, so 0, paren plus
1.
ding 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 ding. A, B, H, K. So in other words, it does fit the form. You don't always have to use all of these pieces. Sometimes the pieces just don't change. But if you ever get stuck, go back to this. The base is usually 0, but you can change it by adding K. The amplitude is usually 1, but you can change it by multiplying by something else. Horizontal shift is usually 0, you can change that. And the period is usually 2 pi, you can change that by dividing by d. Any questions? I would also point out that number 8 did the same thing. The plus 1 is K. I would also add the opposite whenever you can, like at number 10, number 11. That would help you see K properly. So some of these are going to be graphs that are lowered and raised, and some of them are taller and shorter. Figure from there. And are there any questions?
So for number 8, is it plus 1/2? Or is it plus 1? Oh, it's minus 1?
Second, this page is stuck together. For number 8,
Yeah.
it's 1 plus half sine of theta. I would write that as 1/2 sine of theta plus 1.
Wait, 1.
Because whenever it's plus, you can flip them around and it's commutative property.
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem. I just say for number 10, I would add the opposite plus -2. And for number 9, and number 12. Make sense? All right, go to it. If you get stuck, let me know. Otherwise, enjoy. Let me answer the billion emails I have in 5 minutes. Oh yeah, and I can stop recording too. Okay. See you soon, Polly. Take care.